Take care of yourself. My mother-in-law loved saying that to me all the time. But now, she wanted to be taken care of because she got hurt in a car accident she caused. I'm her eldest son's wife, so she expected I would take care of her. Even though, until now, she's always harassed me, told me to take care of myself. Even if she needed help. The fact she's forcing it on me because I'm her eldest son's wife. I was reaching the limit of my patience. The anger inside of me exploded, and my true feelings for my mother-in-law came out like a raging torrent. My name is Chloe. I'm in my 30s and work as a pediatric care nurse in my city's general hospital. When I was in my 20s, I worked full-time and did my graveyard shift. But since I gave birth to my son Paul, I decreased my number of shifts a bit. But working as a nurse, you rarely get to end work exactly at 5 p.m. If an emergency case came in, I would have to work overtime. Even if I had a night shift, I probably wouldn't be able to leave work exactly on time the next morning. But I was proud of my job and put my all into it. I began living with my in-laws after I married my husband, Francis. We built our new home on the same spot that my in-laws' house used to be, so they naturally began living with us. I wasn't against this at first, but my mother-in-law gradually began revealing her true nature, and it became very uncomfortable for me to be at home. My father-in-law was a man of a few words, so I never knew what he was thinking, and we never argued. But my talkative mother-in-law would always insult me the moment she sees me. Why aren't you doing anything when you are the wife? Do you really think it's okay to keep forcing your husband and in-laws to do things for you? As she said that, she began to pick up toys scattered around my son's room. I knew that my son would make a mess again as soon as he saw his room was clean. So I always waited until he was asleep to start cleaning. Even though my mother-in-law also knew that very well, she would complain that I do nothing and pick up Paul's toys while groaning. I never asked her to do that. And I would clean when Paul went to sleep anyway. If I was stuck at work late and couldn't clean, Francis would do it for me, trying to make me seem like a bad person just because of this. Of course, I was annoyed with my mother-in-law. It was my husband who proposed we live together like this, though I was busy in the hospital working as a nurse. Francis worked remotely and was nearly always at home. He wasn't very busy most of the time, so he would do a lot of housework himself. Most people would consider him a wonderful husband because he did that. But of course, my mother-in-law didn't feel that way. A woman is supposed to do her housework. Especially since you married into our family. You should do everything. And yet, you use my precious son this way. My mother-in-law didn't realize I was ignoring her, or maybe she just didn't care. Not that my mother-in-law ever did anything around the house. She would laze around her room all day and leave the dishes she used unwashed, so that I would have to wash them when I get home from work. And if I use the dishwasher, the plates will chip. Wash them by hand. She would complain about even the smallest of things. I tried to tell her, please wash her dishes herself in that case. Since we are letting you use this land, you should do at least this for us. Your role here is to take care of our family. Take care of this yourself. My mother-in-law said things that didn't make sense again, so I let our conversation come to an end. Annoyed, I decided I will avoid talking to my mother-in-law. A few days passed. Francis was the one who usually took Paul to daycare, but since I had the day off work, I decided I would drop off Paul at daycare today. I don't know about other places, but at the daycare we go to, Even if a parent has a day off on a weekdays, they are more than welcome to leave their kids at the daycare. All the parents knew and took advantage of that. But as I was heading out of the house with Paul, "Oh, you have the day off, but you are taking Paul to daycare? If you have a day off, you should also give Paul a day off." She began whining to me. Paul was 3 years old and just getting to a stage where he began throwing tantrums. If he was at home, he wanted to go out. And if he was out, he wanted you to carry him piggyback. If he was hungry, he would get very restless. Francis was busy with work, and Paul was at an age that will be difficult for me to take him out alone. "The daycare says it's fine," I replied quickly. My mother-in-law didn't really like kids. She would get tired of taking care of Paul within 10 minutes. Which is why we took Paul to daycare, even though we lived with his grandparents. Anyway, I wanted to rest today. And Paul liked going to his daycare. He had even been saying since the morning that he wants to go, since they were holding some special event today. But no matter how I explained this to my mother-in-law, she wouldn't accept it. When I suggested she take care of Paul then, she wouldn't agree to that either. If we didn't leave soon, we wouldn't make it to the daycare until after 9 a.m. I didn't know what to do.
"Mom, Chloe works every day without resting. She also does housework and takes care of Paul. The daycare says it's fine. And Paul wants to go too. So, let him go."
My husband came to the rescue. Suddenly, my mother-in-law's anger turned into a smile. "You all right? Go out and enjoy." She sent us off so cheerfully, it almost felt gross. Francis was her only son, so she really loved him. She would easily accept just about anything he told her. So he held a lot of power around the house. I thanked him, and Francis gave me a thumbs up and a carefree smile. After all that hassle, I finally sent Paul off to daycare. When I got home, Francis' car was gone. I usually drove a van I had bought myself, and my husband drove an old compact car. Seeing that his car was gone, I had assumed that Francis has gone out somewhere. But when I entered the house, he was sitting in the living room as usual. When I told him his car was gone, he rushed outside in a panic and was shocked to see the driveway empty. His father was in his room watching TV. So since the car keys were gone, his mother must have gone somewhere. Francis covered his face with his hands, and he said his mother was a horrible driver. Just 1 month ago, she had gotten into a fender bender. My mother-in-law said it wasn't her fault, but when we checked the other car's dashcam, we saw that she had been tailgating them in the entire time. She was undeniably a bad driver. Francis and I had to do all we could to apologize to the other driver to avoid getting into even bigger trouble. We hid our car keys from her, but she somehow found them and went out driving again.
"My mom should still have insurance, as long as she doesn't get into an accident."
Francis was mumbling this to himself. But our fears became reality. A few hours after she had left, I suddenly got a call from the hospital. It was a call from a colleague and friend of mine who worked in the emergency room. She told us that my mother-in-law had sustained huge injuries from a car accident and was currently being transferred to the hospital. I told Francis and his father, and we rushed to the hospital in a panic. My mother-in-law was in the operating hall. We were outside waiting for her, nervously, when the police arrived. When we heard what had happened, we all went pale. According to the police, my mother-in-law was irritated that the car in front of her was driving the speed limit, so she was tailgating them. When the driver in front of her stopped at the red light, my mother-in-law slammed into them. Luckily, the driver in front of her was able to skillfully swerve their car so that they avoided any big trouble. But my mother-in-law ended up driving straight into a telephone pole. It was lucky that no pedestrians were involved. But my mother-in-law had to be brought to the hospital because her lower body had been crushed and she had lost consciousness. As we continued to speak to the police officer, my father-in-law announced that the surgery had finished. Fortunately, her accident hadn't been life-threatening, but her lower body was very hurt and she had to have a leg amputated. Hearing that she was relatively okay, we all relaxed. After some time passed, we were told that my mother-in-law had woken up from her anesthesia, and my father-in-law rushed to her hospital room. Francis and I were speaking to the police officer about the person whose car my mother-in-law had hit, so we didn't make it to the hospital room until a bit later. When my mother-in-law saw me,
Look at this. This is the worst. I can't walk on my own anymore. You're my eldest son's wife, and you are useless around the house. So from now on, you better take responsibility and take care of me. She screamed at me. My father-in-law gave his wife a stern look, and Francis opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something. I had reached my limit. Until now, I'd been able to deal with her selfishness and accept the mean things she said to me. And in order to save her the trouble this time, I even spoke to the police for her, even though she only thought about herself and just caused everyone around her trouble. She was now trying to force me to take care of her. I lost my patience. Shut up. Take care of yourself. That's what you always tell me, right? The anger inside of me exploded, and my true feelings for my mother-in-law came out like a raging torrent. I forgot that my husband and father-in-law were next to me, and I let out all my frustration at my mother-in-law. Francis's father is the one who letting us use the land, and he's the one who gives you all the money you use, right? You've been a housewife all your life, so you don't understand what it means to work full-time like I do. I couldn't stop myself from letting everything out. I normally would just timidly say that full-time and part-time housewives should all help each other out as much as possible. But this time, I couldn't leave it at that. You are supposed to be a housewife, so why don't you actually do something around the house for once? I even bought convenient appliances to help save us time and effort. You can't just hold on to your old-fashioned ways of thinking forever. If you hate that I use appliances so much, do the cleaning and housework yourself. I want to take care of you. When I finally finished talking, Francis looked at me with a worried face. Maybe I went too far. Though I hated her, she was my husband's mother and my father-in-law's wife. Since I married into the family, maybe I should apologize? Chloe, you've been holding this in all this time, huh? I didn't notice at all. I'm sorry for being a failure as a husband.
Francis said softly and hugged me. My father-in-law also sided with me.
Chloe, you put all your effort into her family by keeping the house in order and raising Paul. I've always felt bad. I should have said something before. I'm sorry.
He looked very apologetic. My mother-in-law was stunned to see that both her son and her husband were on my side.
Wait, what are you saying? Why are you making it sound like I'm the bad person here?
She began to make a fuss, but my father-in-law looked at her calmly.
This all happened because you stole the car keys they had hid from you, driving without permission, and getting into this accident. It's all your fault. You need to accept that you were to blame here.
Being told off by her husband, my mother-in-law slouched over. No matter what she tries to say, she's just getting what she deserves. She should be grateful she lost her legs and not her life. Ultimately, no one came to visit her again, and she was lonely in the hospital until she was finally discharged. The day she was finally discharged from the hospital, she seemed very happy. After my mother-in-law had fully regained her consciousness, she was moved from the ICU into a regular ward. I heard from my friends who worked in that ward that she would attack the nurses there every day. I apologized to them countless times. At one point, I stopped hearing about her, and I wondered what had happened. Did you hear? A young patient in the same room as your mother-in-law told her off. The patient told your mother-in-law that she's too old to be treating the nurses like that. One of my colleagues told me in a bemused voice. Since that colleague knew about my mother-in-law had bullied me, she felt very satisfied after that other patient told my mother-in-law off. Now that my mother-in-law had quieted down, I could breathe a sigh of relief. My mother-in-law said the hospital was stifling, so she must have thought that being discharged meant that she could be free again. But our punishment had just begun. Can you take a look at this? I handed my mother-in-law a pamphlet for an elderly care home. She immediately understood that we were planning to send her there.
Why do I have to go there? Taking care of me is your job,
she repeated again. Doesn't she understand what we all think about her by now? There is not one person in this house who wants to take care of you. If you can do everything on your own, you can stay here. But you realize that no one will help you, right? My mother-in-law's face got bright red, and she was seething in anger.
Stop saying such stupid things. There's no way you can neglect me like this.
She continued to bark at us like this, but no one wanted to take care of her. She wouldn't listen to any of my explanations. So Francis eventually had to force her to understand the harsh truth.
Mom, you realize that getting discharged from the hospital didn't mean that everything was over, right? We haven't been able to sort out anything related to your accident. Can you take responsibility for totaling my car? By telling you to do everything yourself, we mean taking responsibility for your car accident as well.
Being told this, my mother-in-law was silent. The driver of the other car recovered from all of their injuries within a month. The passenger had just suffered from some minor scratches and bruises. My husband's car had been completely wrecked. Our insurance covered the damage of the other person's car, but not to my husband's. Since this wasn't the first time she had caused an accident, it was clear that my mother-in-law would also be punished by the law. Her driver's license would definitely get taken away, and she would probably have to pay around $4,000 in fines. And considering the compensation she would have to pay the other driver, she would have a lot of money to pay. If you have enough money to pay all your fines, buy Francis a new car and hire yourself a helper. Go ahead and do it. My mother-in-law had nothing more to say, so she finally gave up. She probably didn't think this would become such a big deal. We signed her up for the care home. We used her life insurance to cover the fines. She had to pay the care home cost. Since she had lost one of her legs, she was able to receive disability from the government, which helped a lot. Her driver's license was taken away, and since she was living in the care home, she would likely never have access to a car again. But it seemed her life in the care home isn't all that great. Since she has a bad personality, she hadn't been able to make any friends. She continuously insults all the other residents and attacks the caretakers, so everyone hates her. We rarely ever visit her though, so we don't bother ourselves with that. She has no one by her side and lives a lonely life. A huge took place in her home since my mother-in-law moved out. First, with my father-in-law. Fishing is dirty and just a waste of money. My mother-in-law was against my father-in-law's hobby. But now that she was gone, he could finally enjoy fishing again. He would leave the house early or sometimes disappear late at night. He's been catching all kinds of fish recently and letting us taste all of them. Some of his friends are professional fishermen, so he even gets enjoy riding on their fishing boats with them. He used to just stay in his room all day, but now he's energetic and living his life the way he wants to. With the stress of my mother-in-law gone, I got pregnant with Francis and I's second child within 3 months. Surprised and happy at the same time, our family is now eagerly awaiting the birth of our new baby.
I can't eat this trash! Ha ha! My mother-in-law began throwing the food I had cooked into the trash.
Mom, let's go out and eat something nice.
Saying that, my husband and mother-in-law left the house. Left on my own, I sat at the dinner table and quietly ate what I had cooked. The next day, when I returned home from work, my mother-in-law began furiously questioning me.
You? What in the world did you do?
My name is Remy. I'm 32 years old and I work in a clothing store. It's a store for brand name clothing. So working there means being very serious about customer service. How can you make someone feel good about their purchase? How do you adapt your customer service to individual customer needs? You need to constantly think about those sort of things in order to make sales. I'm proud of my job and work very seriously every day. I graduated from a fashion school and have been working at the same store for 12 years now. I'm currently the store manager and I work hard together with my team. Because I focus on my work so much, I was a bit of a late bloomer when it came to romance. My friends and colleagues all got married and had kids one by one. Going to all of their weddings, I thought I should be next, but I would be concentrating on work and had left love on the back burner. But finally, it was my turn. I met him at a matchmaking event a friend invited me to. His name was William. He worked at a big company and was 2 years younger than me. He was good looking and had a calm personality. I'm sure he was popular, but he had been single for some time. He sat near me, so we got to speak a lot at the event. Learning that our taste in music and movies were similar, we decided to go watch a movie together sometime. We exchanged phone numbers and planned our date. After our first date, we met regularly and eventually officially became girlfriend and boyfriend. He was my first boyfriend in 2 years. All my colleagues complimented me for dating an elite businessman, but I wondered how things would develop between us. Personally, since I was getting older, I didn't want to waste time dating and just wanted to get married already. 6 months after we began dating, he proposed. He proposed to me at a restaurant with a beautiful view. I was touched, so I said yes. All my friends and colleagues were very happy for me.
I didn't think you'd ever get married.
What? Don't say that. Everyone complimented me and wished us well, but among them all was our not very delicate area manager, Carter. Women will hate you if you talk like that.
I don't need everyone to like me, haha.
Carter and I are the same age. His job in the company is to craft marketing strategies, and he travels around to different stores across the country in order to help them increase their sales. The shop I manage is our company's main branch, so Carter comes here more than any other store. He's become a close friend throughout the years. I'm not even talking about everyone. Can you get even one person to like you? Haha.
Don't say that, haha. Now that you're getting married, you think you can show off, haha.
I will be happy before you, haha. Since most of my colleagues are younger than me, there aren't many others that I can joke around like this with. So Carter was very important to me. My marriage started off well, but soon there were some difficulties. You're Remy, right? You don't look classy at all. Huh? That was the first thing my mother-in-law said to me when I met her. Suddenly, having those words thrown at me, I froze. I try to put effort into my appearance, but... Well, that's just because you can get discounts on the brand name goods your shop sells, right? It's a shame your store does that, haha. What? My mother-in-law always insulted me like that.
Hey, stop acting like you're so important.
My father-in-law lashed out at my mother-in-law and she went quiet. I haven't been able to trust her since then. That encounter with her even made me rethink my upcoming marriage. But I loved William, so ultimately I married him. My parents were also super happy I was getting married, and I didn't want to disappoint them. I wore a dress I loved at the ceremony, and everyone congratulated me. After our honeymoon, our marriage life officially began. At first, we were very happy. Living with each other, having dinner together every night, sleeping side by side, and saying good morning to each other every morning. I was happy to be with him. I felt lucky to be living such a cheerful married life. But a month later, there was a sudden change, and it was a bad one. When I came home from work one Saturday, I opened the front door and saw women's shoes I didn't recognize. My whole body shook as I entered the living room and discovered my mother-in-law. Becky. My initial thought was that my husband was cheating on me, so I was relieved to see his mother was visiting. But I began to wonder why she was here. Remy, what are you thinking leaving William alone like this? Huh? Where were you? I was at work. What? Work? Work is something you do during the week, right? It's the weekend. Don't lie to me like that. That's true when it comes to people working regular day jobs. But since I'm in the service industry, weekends are my most important work days. My mother-in-law grinned. Oh, that's right. You don't have a real job, haha. You graduated from a vocational school and now you work part-time at a clothing store, haha. I see. She pretended to be angry to set me up and make fun of me. I don't work part-time. I'm the full-time store manager. I tried to explain to her, but she didn't listen and just laughed and told me not to try to act tough. More importantly, why are you here? When I asked her, my mother-in-law's eyes opened widely. Obviously, I'm here to see William. What other reason would I come here for? You're so weird. Or could it be that you're stupid because you didn't go to college? My mother-in-law continued to make jabs at me. I looked over at my husband, but he was just watching TV and not paying attention to us at all. I assumed my husband would be on my side, so for now, I just decided to let what she said go in one ear and out the other, and wait for her to leave. Excuse me, but when do you plan on going home tonight? When I asked my mother-in-law that question, her reply surprised me. What are you saying? I'm staying over tonight. Huh? Staying here? What? Do you want to complain? I'm meeting my son for the first time in a month. Are you trying to force me to go home? No, that's not what In that case, there's no problem. You're so annoying. After getting angry at me, she sat down next to William on the sofa and began watching TV with him. That's my spot. I never expected my mother-in-law would be here when I got home. I felt mentally exhausted. Wait, Remy, when are you going to cook dinner? Not even 5 minutes had passed since I got home, and my mother-in-law suddenly said that to me. I quickly made dinner, but then my mother-in-law complained the entire time she was eating. What tasteless food! Do you always cook this kind of food for William? In general, I try to cook him food he likes. Useless! William likes richer tasting food, right? Yeah, Mommy. Huh? He just called his mother Mommy. I was shocked. I mean, that's fine and all, but the fact he did that so suddenly surprised me. After we finished eating, and my husband and I were alone in our bedroom, I asked him, Hey, don't you think your mother is a bit mean to me? My husband looked at me wide-eyed. When? My mom is such a kind and amazing person. Why would you say that? At that moment, I realized he was a mama's boy. So sorry. It didn't seem like William would be on my side. My mother-in-law ended up sleeping over the next day as well. She began coming over often and taking up the time I wanted to spend along with my husband. As this continued, it became tougher on me. Wondering what to do, I got in touch with my father-in-law about it. He was shocked to hear what I said. He apologized for her. I will give my wife a stern talking to. My father-in-law was a really good person. After he scolded William's mother, she stopped coming over. When she wanted to come over, she would call William in advance, and he would ask me if it's okay with me. But then, a new problem arose. My husband became distrustful of me. Why did you say something weird like that to my dad? Mom is coming over for my sake. My husband blamed me like that. But I beat back. I live here too, don't I? I can't relax when your mother is here. You are treating my mommy like she's a bother. I never said that. In that case, can I invite my mom over whenever I want? Excuse me? It's okay if my mom is here when you come home from work, right? Well... He seemed to accept what I said, but told me that if I treated his mommy like she was a nuisance, he wouldn't forgive me. He was 100% a mama's boy. No matter what happens with my mother-in-law from now on, William definitely won't be on my side. Around that time, something happened that made me completely cut off my ties with my husband and mother-in-law. It was New Year's Eve. Against my will, I was at my in-laws' house. William wanted to celebrate the new year there. I quickly felt uncomfortable, and that was because my father-in-law was missing. Where is William's father? Oh, he's in the hospital. Huh? The hospital? I haven't heard anything about this. It turns out my father-in-law had broken his leg a few days earlier and was currently hospitalized. Who said I need to tell you? My mother-in-law spoke as if it's only natural I know nothing. My father-in-law had helped me out a lot, and we got along well, so how could she just say that? Then something else surprising happened. More importantly, aren't you going to cook us a nice meal for the new year? Huh? I haven't prepared anything. My husband is the one who usually cooks. Since he's not here, there's nothing to eat. So get to cooking. What? As I was at a loss for words, my husband joined in. Hey Remy, Mommy's asking you, so get to it. She's not asking me, she's ordering me. I had no choice, so I took the car and went to the grocery store. I bought some semi-ready food since I wouldn't have too much time to cook before dinner time. I quickly bought everything I needed. Since it was already New Year's Eve, most people had done all their shopping, and the shelves at the grocery store were nearly empty. Buying ingredients in itself was a lot of effort. I quickly returned home and got to cooking. I got home early evening, but William and his mother were already eating something. They had ordered delivery. Seeing them eating made me angry, but I knew that if I didn't prepare anything, they would just be annoying, so I put all my effort into cooking. By the time I realized, it was already 3 a.m. While I was still cooking, my mother-in-law had woken up and said she was hungry and asked me to make her a late-night snack. I didn't want her to bother me while I was cooking, so I told her to eat some instant noodles or something. That made her angry. "What kind of wife are you? Treating your own mother-in-law like this? Do you think I will forgive you? You're such a hopeless woman." My mother-in-law took some of the ingredients I had prepared and began to cook herself fried rice. I stayed silent, but I was really mad. She seemed to cook slowly on purpose and would take ingredients straight out of my hands with a huge smile on her face. By the time I had completely finished cooking, it was 5 a.m. At least I was set for the day ahead. I went to bed. I was exhausted after cooking all night, so I didn't wake up until noon. When I woke up and got out of the bedroom, I heard a noise from the kitchen. Wondering what it was, I entered the kitchen and couldn't believe what I was seeing. Wait, what are you doing? I can't eat this trash, haha. Saying that, my mother-in-law began throwing out the food I had cooked. I rushed to stop her. "Please stop. Why would you do this? Let go of me." When she screamed that, my husband rushed into the kitchen. "Hey, what are you doing?" "Stop your mother. Your mother is trying to throw out all the food I've cooked." "What the? Remy, don't bother my mom." "What?" "If my mom says she doesn't like it, it's obviously trash, haha." "She can't just throw away the food I put so much effort into cooking." "It's your fault for making something she can't accept." "Shouldn't the person throwing away perfectly good food be at fault here?" William blamed me, and when I tried to defend myself, he made a bored face. Whatever. It's always someone else's fault, huh?" "What?" "Mom, let's go out and eat something nice." "Yeah, let's go eat something delicious, just the two of us." They left the house. I was sick of them from the bottom of my heart. Left on my own, I sat at the dinner table and quietly ate what I had cooked. They spent the whole day out celebrating and didn't come home until late. The next day, I was going to be busy with New Year's sales, so by the time they returned home, I was asleep. The next day, when I returned home from work, my mother-in-law began furiously questioning me. You? What in the world did you do?" "Huh? What do you mean?" I woke up and left for work early because of the sales. Looking at the amount of empty beer cans laying around the house, it seems William and his mother stayed up late drinking. When I got to my store, I forgot about them and focused on working. Many customers came to the store that day, and it was super busy. So when I returned home from work, and my mother-in-law began questioning me intensely, I didn't know what was going on. My mother-in-law said something shocking. "I suddenly got a call from my husband saying that he's going to divorce me. He said the reason was the way I bullied you this New Year's." "Huh?" I was surprised. Though I have spoken to my father-in-law about the way my mother-in-law treated me before, I hadn't said anything to him this time. I didn't even know he was hospitalized, and I hadn't had the chance to visit him yet. How did he know how my mother-in-law had treated me? "Remy, what did you say to my dad? Why are you doing this to my mom?" William and his mother both blamed me. I couldn't take it anymore. I heard something snap inside my head. "In that case, let's get divorced too." "Huh?" What I said obviously shook William to the core. "Wait, why would we?" You never protect me when your mother treats me badly. In fact, you join forces with her and attack me. So there's no need for us to be together anymore. I can't stay married to someone who doesn't protect me. Let's divorce."
No way!
William and his mother began to act nervous, but I was unforgiving. William planned to spend 3 nights at his parents' house, but I packed my bags and went home that night. I quickly gathered my belongings and moved to my parents' house. My parents were surprised when I suddenly came home, but they were outraged when I told them what had happened. They told me I should get a divorce. William called me many times, but I ignored him. Meanwhile, I focused on my work. Once the New Year sales ended and things calmed down, I visited my father-in-law at the hospital. Talking to me, I found out the surprising truth. Since my father-in-law knew that if he wasn't around, his wife might bully me, he hid a camera in their home. Through that camera, he saw how his wife and William treated me. What he saw was so horrible that he decided to divorce his wife.
You can use that footage against William when you divorce him as well.
He gave me a copy of the recordings. Thanks to those, the divorce ended in my favor, and it was even decided that I would receive monetary compensation from him. One of my employees' boyfriends actually works at the same company as William. That boyfriend spread rumors around William's workplace about what had happened. It quickly became well known that William was a mama's boy who, together with his mother, treated me horribly. He had no choice but to continue working because he owed me money, but everyone he worked with began treating him coldly. When my in-laws divorced, my father-in-law kicked my mother-in-law out of their home. I've heard my ex-mother-in-law is now leeching off of William. William is stuck dealing with the stress of making enough money for 2 people, as well as paying off the money he owes me. I'm sure it's taking a toll on him mentally. Good, that's what he deserves. I'm into my job as always, and I will make sure I forget this whole mess. One day, Carter invited me out for dinner.
I'm inviting you because I'm sure you're feeling down.
Not really.
Really? I even made a reservation at a fancy restaurant. I guess I will just cancel it then.
You should have said that earlier. Let's go.
Typical. Haha.
I don't know if anything will happen between Carter and I, but if I do get remarried, I wanted to be with someone who will be by my side even though rough moments. Well, in the meantime, I will continue doing my very best as my store's manager.
I am tired of an old hag. Please leave me.
My husband, who had proudly attempted the act at the entrance of our home, said so in an uninterested manner. And the woman he was with also grinned and made a cheap apology saying, "I'm sorry I took your man." She didn't seem sorry at all. It's been a little over a year since we got married, and I feel ashamed of myself for having loved such a scumbag. But at the same time, I'm grateful for the opportunity saving me from the trouble of taking revenge. I've decided to go home to my parents with a big smile on my face, as I look forward to seeing my husband's expression when he finds out the truth. My name is Alice. My father is the president of a big company, and my mother is a famous violinist. I was proud of my parents, as they have always been in love, even though they are both getting older. The time had finally come for me to become a bride. I met my husband when we joined the same club in college and discovered we had the same interests. His name was Ryan, and he was the son of the president of a company too. However, I did not tell him that I was daughter of a company president. Many men would approach me for my house or money, and I felt like they didn't see me for who I really was, and it made me feel vain. So I treated Ryan as a normal friend. However, he asked me for a serious relationship, and we started dating in the summer of our sophomore year of college. When we both graduated and started working, we decided to get married. However, we only enjoyed a year and a few months of newlywed life before I became pregnant. Because we had been friends for long before our relationship, we did not have the same initial feeling as when we first started dating. Still, I think we respected each other as a couple and kept a good distance. Of course, we also made love, and because we were both young and healthy, I became pregnant a few months after we started trying to conceive. My husband was very happy about it, but the problem was that from this point on, my morning sickness was very bad. I started sleeping a lot at home, and my conversations with my husband decreased dramatically. It was more like I couldn't talk to him because I was too ill. I was nauseous 24 hours a day, and the only thing that kept me going was jelly pouches. However, my doctor told me that during this period, as long as I drank water even if I didn't eat, I would be fine. I stayed patient until the stable period arrived and the morning sickness settled down. Finally, around the time I was 20 weeks pregnant, it began to subside. Up until this point, I had been taking time off from work because of the sickness. Since I joined my father's company, he was able to take action for my pregnancy from early on. But I still felt like I was placing a heavy burden on everyone around me. So I got back to work and took over and did my job. Of course, I did it in a way that did not affect the baby. After returning to work, I was working from morning to night every day. I hadn't noticed it due to my busy schedule, but I felt a little different and uncomfortable in my relationship with my husband. Even after my sickness settled down, my husband was somewhat quiet and didn't talk to me much. Even when I tried to talk to him, he would only respond with a simple "oh" or "I see." My husband has been very busy recently and has been tense because he is preparing to take over the company. I thought that was the reason he was so quiet, but it seems I was wrong. One day, when I went to take out the trash, a woman who lived on the same floor in the same apartment building suddenly came up to me. I had only greeted her before, so I was a little wary of her. She looked around and was checking something. Then, she put her hand to my mouth and quietly whispered something like this to me. She said that several times a week during the daytime on weekdays, my husband will let a woman into his room and she should come out about an hour later. The woman gave me a description of the woman and asked if she was either one's younger sister. Neither my husband nor I have a younger sister. My husband has a sister, but she is over 30. She is married with children, and she is not here because she went with her husband to live in a rural area. She described the woman to be a young woman in her 20s, and that was why she was curious. Since I'm not that insensitive, I thought that my husband was probably having an affair. Recently, my husband has been acting strangely indifferent to me, and he even has been indifferent to our baby. The more I dig, the more suspicious I find. At any rate, I just thanked the woman who told me, and took out the garbage and went back to my room. That evening, I was inclined to question my husband as soon as he came home. However, he was in a very bad mood, as if something had happened at work. He threw his bag roughly and took off his clothes, then went to take a shower without saying a word. After a while, he came out and said, "I won't need dinner today. I don't have an appetite," and started to head back to his room. I had already prepared a meal for two at the table, and I was suspicious that my husband was cheating on me, so this attitude made me irritated. There's no need to talk like that. If you don't need dinner, you could have told me earlier. And don't leave your clothes and bag around. I have been concerned about my husband's sloppiness for a while now. I usually don't say it to him, but today I felt like I had to say something about it. So I said something like that to my husband. Huh? Shut up, you old hag. He spat out these words and went back to his room. I was shocked that he called me an old hag when I was still in my mid-20s. I was so annoyed with my husband's attitude that my frustration reached its peak. I ate a whole meal for two, took a bath, and watched a movie in the living room by myself since tomorrow was my day off from work. I fell asleep before I knew it, and when I peeked into my husband's room in the morning, he was gone. I checked the front door and found no shoes. I thought he had gone out for a walk or something, but he never came home again. Yesterday's attitude, leaving his pregnant wife without saying anything, cheating, and not coming home. I am at my limit. I immediately went online and listed several companies that specialize in investigating affairs. Then I consulted with a private detective who had a high rating and asked him to gather solid evidence for me, as I was willing to pay him any amount of money for his services. Then, a few days after I got into a cold war with my husband, I had been suffering from an upset stomach since the morning and couldn't concentrate on work. Then my boss, who was worried about me, suggested that I go see an obstetrician just to be sure. I left work early and went to the hospital, where I was told that I was having an impending premature labor. She didn't know the cause, but said it would do me no harm to rest. I thought that I must have put my baby in danger because of the stress I had been under the past few days. I burst into tears from frustration. Then, I managed to get home and turn the key. With a sign, I opened the door and was stunned by the sight in front of me. There at the front door was my husband and a young woman I didn't know, embracing each other. I guess they were not expecting me to come home, so they just stared at each other with their widened eyes. Then, my husband, who had regained his composure first, yelled at me, "Why are you home already?" My husband glares at me as he hurriedly fixes the sagging of his clothes and wipes the woman's lipstick from his lips. The woman is strangely calm even though she saw me too, and smiles at me in a mocking way. What the woman on the same floor told me was true. "Hey Ryan, you're supposed to be working right now, right? I see you've skipped work to play with that girl at home with no hesitation." I gave them a look of disdain, but they didn't seem to hear me at all. On the contrary, my husband, who had become defiant, muttered this as if for a matter of course. "I'm tired of an old hag. You're pregnant, and I don't want to have to put up with you all the time. Please leave me." At that time, I felt a tremendous shock run through my body. I was carrying a child with my husband in my belly and desperately trying to raise it. How could he complain because his needs were not being met? Then the affair partner heard this and laughed hysterically, and with tears in her eyes, she said, "That's hilarious. Well, we are all old hags when we finish college, right? I'm so sorry I stole your husband, the next president of the company." From this statement, it was determined that she was in college or younger. I knew this to some extent because I had done some research, but I naturally burst out laughing from their statements. "Oh, are you sure? Are you really going to break up with me? I'm going to charge your alimony. Will you pay it?" When I said that, my husband looked a bit giddy for a moment, but then he immediately snickered. "I guess common women are really greedy for money, aren't they? It hurts to watch. Well, okay. I will pay your price," he said. The affair partner knew he was married and still was having an affair with him, so I said I would charge her as well. "I will pay her share too." He is showing a casual, mature attitude, and the woman is delirious at the sight of it. What in the world am I being shown? Anyway, it happened at the time when I was about to start talking about divorce and alimony, so I guess I was lucky. Witnessing the two of them in action was a huge miscalculation, but it was a good thing. I saved myself some trouble. Later that day, I packed my bags and headed back to my parents' house. The next day, sure enough, I got a call from my husband crying.
Wait a minute, you're the daughter of the president of Smith? That big pharma company? I never heard anything about that.
It seems that my husband finally realized that I was the daughter of the president of a well-known pharmaceutical company around here. Or rather, it was inevitable that this would happen. Yesterday, I came home and told my parents, who were very surprised to see me. I told them that the two of them had been engaging in their daily activities in broad daylight, and that they had abused me and declared a divorce. I had hired a private detective, so everything was pretty smooth. My father, who had heard the story, was furious and immediately contacted my husband's father and said,
What kind of an education are you giving your son? My daughter came home hurt. No more talk on the project. I will never do business with your company again.
Yes, our company and my husband's company actually have a business relationship, and our company is superior in position. My husband is in charge of outside sales, and I'm basically in charge of accounting, so we didn't have to deal with each other, so I guess he didn't know. He had no idea that I was an employee of a business partner company, and also the daughter of that company's president. Naturally, my husband's father or father-in-law received an angry phone call from my father. He immediately contacted my husband and called him over. There, my husband learned the whole truth, and he panicked and called me. This is what has happened so far. The flow has changed in just one day after I announced the divorce, and my husband, who is freaking out, is now saying to me,
I admit that I was wrong, so please don't divorce me. If our company and Smith Pharma cease doing business, our company will suffer a great deal of damage.
He is desperately trying to restore our relationship, but I had already decided on my answer. After neglecting your pregnant wife and leaving work to make out with another woman in the daytime, you were the one who forced me to leave, saying that you were tired of an old hag, right? If you're going to be the next president, at least take responsibility for your words. When I said this angrily, my husband fell silent. I'm wondering what he thought he could do to get me to forgive him. But even so, I know that if he backed down now, his company will be in serious trouble. It is inevitable that he will be pulled down from his position as successor. So at that time, he hung up the phone as if he had given up. But the next day, he was in front of my parents' house and apologized outside the door. He shouted,
I heard from my father. Smith was planning a big project with us. If we get divorced, it's totally off the table. Please reconsider.
1 minute, my husband was apologizing. The next, he is desperately begging for forgiveness with words of self-preservation. I was truly ashamed to think that there was a period of time when I loved such a person even a little. Although I ignored him for a while, my husband showed no signs of backing down. Then, my father, who was reading the newspaper, gulped down all the coffee he was drinking. He put the cup down roughly and went to the front door. And then,
Go home! I will never let a tramp like you see my daughter again. I will have you go through a lawyer from now on. If you don't leave now, I will call the police.
He said with the face of a demon. My husband turned pale and left. But when I thought he had left, he returned soon after. This time, my father-in-law joined him.
Mr. President, I'm very sorry for what my stupid son has done. I will make him pay for hurting your daughter, so please, just the project.
Even after hearing this, my father's feeling did not seem to change, and he declared that he would never do business with them again. My father-in-law's complexion was getting worse and worse, and he looked as if he was going to collapse at any time. My husband is shaking as he realizes that he is putting not only his parents' lives, but also the lives of all the employees at risk. This was not going to end well, and I had something I wanted to tell my father-in-law. I made a decision to settle the matter here. I had been in my parents' house for a long time, and suddenly showed up, so my husband's face lights up as he approaches me. But when I shook off his hand and glared when he reached over to me, he was in loss of words. Perhaps because he had never been so strongly rejected by me before. I gave him no time to catch his breath and said, "You are a married man, and she has a fiancé who is working. And I heard her fiancé works for a rival company of yours." My husband blinks rapidly, as if he had an idea of what I was talking about. My father-in-law, who did not seem to grasp the situation, looked at my husband suspiciously. I told him everything I had obtained from the detective. This man is leaking confidential company information to her. Then, my husband turned the other way and fled. Nah, he couldn't do that.
Ryan, do you know anything about this?
My father-in-law reacted immediately and grabbed my husband's hand to stop him. My husband's body was shaking in fear, and all he could do was smile awkwardly. Seeing my husband in such a pitiful state, I let out a sigh and continued. The woman with whom he was having an affair, she seems to have been lonely because her fiancé had not been taking care of her recently. So she approached Ryan, the son of the president of the rival company, and tricked him into giving her confidential information. She passed it on to her fiancé to get his attention. You know what? She was just using you. When I said this to my husband with a cold look in my eyes, he slowly opened his mouth and blurted out something like this.
It wasn't a coincidence that I met her, so she was the one who set it all up. Oh no, we made a promise that we'll get married if I left you.
My husband, finally realizing that he was in the worst possible situation, collapsed to his knees. The woman, whom he had never doubted, had been an enemy's spy. He loses his wife in the process. I couldn't find words to describe it better than a disaster. In the end, this man was only seen as a son of the president of the company, and he was only being used. It must be his damnation for abandoning his pregnant wife for his own foolish desire. After I finished speaking, I glanced at my father-in-law.
Oh my God! You not only ruined our business with Smith's Pharmaceuticals, but you even leaked information to a rival company. Are you trying to destroy our company?
He looked at his son with a regretful expression, as angry as he could be. My husband could not help himself by apologizing to me any further, and he realized that he had done something that could not be undone, and he just froze on the spot. For a while, the atmosphere was heavy and gloomy, like a funeral. My father, who was watching what was happening behind me, said,
"Go home now. I have no more use for you."
With that, my husband and father-in-law left. After that, our company's business with my father-in-law's was immediately suspended. They could not talk back and had to accept the cancellation of business. We were also forced to deal with the leak of confidential information. I could imagine the employees being overwhelmed by the situation. I heard that they were so exhausted that many of them resigned. In the end, the big project was scrapped too. My husband's company went bankrupt, including the damage caused by the leak of confidential information. At this time, a settlement regarding the divorce was reached, and I finally divorced Ryan and became a stranger. As I had declared, I demanded millions of dollars in alimony and child support from my ex-husband, including that of the affair partner. Then, he started saying that he would pay his own alimony and child support, but he would not pay her portion. So I thought it was a hassle, but I filed a claim for alimony to her. I was told that her fiancé had found out about the affair because of the contents certified letter. Naturally, she was dumped by her fiancé. Everything was settled after this proposal. Her fiancé said that he would like me to do business with him and his company in exchange for him paying his girlfriend's portion of the alimony. Our interests were more aligned with their company, and more importantly, my ex-husband's company is bankrupt, so securing another business partner is a must. She is still a college student, has no part-time job, and probably wouldn't be able to pay what I charged, so I agreed on that. It was also her sole discretion to leak the information in the first place. Her ex-fiancé never asked for any of that. It was none of our business. We were able to secure a new business partner, and the project we had originally planned was a great success as a result of working with that company. So I think that it ended well. My ex-husband was disowned by his parents and turned to his sister. I guess because her husband also runs a company, he was also disowned at the door. According to our mutual acquaintance, he is now holed up in a one-bedroom apartment, working from home while working as a guard at night to make a living. Perhaps because my ex-husband was the son of a company president, he had a high sense of pride. I don't know how humiliating it must be for him to live the way he does now, but he deserves it. As for me, I gave birth to a healthy boy safely after that. Even if he has the blood of that scumbag, there is no doubt that he is my child. So I raised him gently at times and strictly at others, so that he would not be like that scumbag. Fortunately, my family is wealthy, and I myself am working, so we are not in financial trouble. We also welcomed a dog and cat as our new family members. My parents, myself, my son, and our pets live very happily together.